Hi everyone, I wanted to talk about a game website that I've been running for the last year and the architecture and where it's at right now. So the game is called Halo Wars 2 and it came out in 2017 I think, so over 7 years ago, and the new player base I think has mostly died off and it's just full of hardcore gamers now which want to see their stats when they play a game. So it's not like a typical Halo Wars Halo game. It's more of a strategy where you have to build your bases and build your units and go and kill other bases. And each game will last maybe 20 to 40 minutes. And when the game's finished, the original creators, 343 and Microsoft, had a website which you could go to called Halo Waypoint. This would display the stats of the game. And about 2 or 3 years ago, they shut that website down. Just before they shut that website down, I completely made a copy of it with the CSS and HTML, and I remade it by connecting to a API that they provided. So what you can see in front of you here is the website that I originally copied with a few updates. So if we go straight to what the main bulk of the website entailed, you would go on a player, you'd search your player, go on any player, and then you could go on their service record, which includes their unit breakdown, their win percentage, their highest rank, and then you could look at their game history. So a lot of players will play a game and then they'd look at the history of the game and see who they played, what stats are produced, the units, a bunch of graphs such as how much population you've got, the supply income you had, and what units you built during that game. So this website was up for maybe a year and a half, I think, and then I decided to try and improve it a year ago. And that's where we're at today. So the website structure is something like what I've drawn on Excalidraw. So Excalidraw, I've diagrammed out what the current architecture is. And I said that I get the data from API. So this is the API, 343 Microsoft Halo API, I think it's called, Halo Developer API. And the API keys, they only gave out developer keys, which were limited to 10 requests every 10 seconds, which meant I had to get a lot of API keys. So I think I generated about 70 keys, and I would rotate them so that I would never hit the limit. So I had a proxy server which I built here, which would store 70 keys and then select the correct key which is valid, which hasn't used up all its 10 requests in those 10 seconds, to send through a request. So this proxy server was really important to get this working, because what I planned to do was to get all the data of games played, players played, so that I could start aggregating it and finding out what the online player count was, how many new players you had each month joining, extend the leaderboards. So the original leaderboards would come from the API, and there was 250 people on the leaderboards, but then I managed to extend them to the entire player base, which I limited down to I think a few thousand players. So we have this proxy server right now, which has 70 API keys in it or more. And then I had a bunch of cron scripts, maybe 3 to 5, and these cron scripts, they run inside, I should say, all this is inside the Hetzner dedicated server. So Hetzner's a company and they provide dedicated servers. So everything you see in this orange box is running inside a single server. And there's 3 to 5 cron scripts which go through and request data from the API. They save data to the database, they aggregate it. These can run every hour or they can run once a month depending on what data is being aggregated. And this gets stored in a database, which has been a big problem and something that I need to address. So the database is a MySQL server. The database is 200 gigabytes or more, which has caused a big problem for running out of memory on the server. And every month, I think 4 to 5 gigabytes get added. And it's got roughly 20 million plus games stored in there that have been played, 1 million players information, and lots of other things that have been stored inside this database. But this has caused problems with the Hetzner dedicated server running out of storage. So I've got to try and figure a solution out for this. And then we come down to the backend, which is a Next.js application. So it's kind of baked in with the front end. And the Next.js application, parts of it will go and get data from the database when you want to see stats in these game stats, such as new players. This is coming from database queries. And then parts of it will go directly to the 343 API through the proxy server. And that's when you are looking at game history, service record. These are important pages to keep working. So in order to make sure that, for instance, if the database goes down or this script stops, that the user can still get the data they want. And lastly, you've got the React app. So you can't really tell the difference between these two. Nothing is done client-side. It's mainly done server-side in Next.js, server-side rendered with these requests. Okay, so now we come to where some problems have occurred. About 3 months ago, 343 messaged me, and they didn't want me using these 70 plus API keys because I was, quite rightly, hammering their server with requests, maybe, I don't know, at least 20 requests a second continuously. So they didn't like the idea that I'd found a way around their rate limit. And they ended up, after 2 or 3 weeks, they ended up giving me a production API key, which I think is limited to 200 requests every 10 seconds, which is great. So now I can use the production API key. The only downside is I can't just plug it in because I've designed everything around this proxy server. So I need to alter my scripts. I need to alter the backend Next.js to go straight to 343. Not only that, but the Next.js builds up a ridiculous amount of cache, and I'm not sure how to solve it. So it will end up getting about 40 to 50 gigabytes worth of cache saved up. And caching in Next.js 14, I think, is what I used, or 13, is not easy to handle. So there's a few things I need to do on this project to improve it and get it working again. At the moment, 343 didn't like me using these API keys, so I stopped using them. So this script stopped. The database stopped updating, which meant that certain stats like these are no longer working. And I think maybe online players no longer works because it's got no data, so it just errors out. There's probably many more aspects of this that don't work purely because the database is no longer updating. So saying that, onto the work that I need to do and that I will probably document and show some of it is, firstly, the cache issue. With the cache on the Hetzner dedicated server, these cache issues are quite common when you host Next.js apps yourself. So instead, I'm going to move it from Hetzner to Vercel. I didn't do that originally, purely because I just thought it'd be easier to have everything in one dedicated server. But now I realize Next.js is easier to handle if you don't handle it at all. So I'll put it into Vercel. The downside of that is Vercel can't connect directly to a database. It can only go through HTTP requests. So it means that I've got to separate all the database queries that I was doing from my Next.js into its own backend Node.js Express server, probably. And that will then do the request to the database. And this will live inside Hetzner. So this is one task I've got to do, and that's quite involved with refactoring the code. And then the second task is obviously the removal of the proxy server. I no longer need that now, so that can be removed completely, and the scripts can use the production API key that was given to me. That shouldn't be too much of an issue. And then the final issue is this database size. So the database stores so much data, and a lot of it is unnecessary, like game events. So a game has certain events involved with it, such as unit killed, how much resources you had at a certain point, when a particular node was taken, power node or whatever. And this is all pretty pointless to keep inside the database. So I need to aggregate this data, keep the ones that I want, keep the bits that I want, and then delete the rest. And I believe I could probably delete over 100 gigabytes of data. And this is to stop Hetzner server from just running out of memory, because the memory of the server is, I think, 250 gigabytes. And it costs 45 euros a month, I think. So I'm hoping that if I can reduce the database size and also reduce this cache issue so that it no longer caches 40 to 50 gigabytes of memory, of data, in memory, then I can reduce the size of the server as well and save some money. Luckily, the first, I think, 6 months of this server running has been completely paid for by the community that donated to this through the support link here. So I'm very grateful for that. But recently, due to this issue with 343, the website has stopped working correctly. I've had cache problems, so I really need to focus on getting this solved so that people are happy with me again in the community as well for this game. So yeah, this is what I'm going to document over the next week or two of me doing this work, and hopefully it'll give you an insight into how systems work a bit better, how architecture changes, and the reason why. Great, thank you very much.